Hi students, this is Miss Tomorrow, and we're going to continue on with what we did in our last video, except we're going to be finding the slope at any point. So we're basically getting the using the same formula, and instead of finding the slope at a certain point, we're finding a formula to find the slope at any point. So we're going to use our limit formula, and we want to find the limit or the slope when f of x equals radical x minus 2. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is set it up. So limit is h approaches 0 of, so remember, instead of x, we're going to put x plus h in. So it's going to be radical x plus h minus radical x minus 2. Oops, I forgot the minus 2 here. All over h. Okay, so since we have a radical in the question, we are going to want to rationalize this, because if we plug 0 in, it's going to be undefined. So we're going to multiply by the conjugate. So the conjugate is radical x plus h minus 2 plus radical x minus 2. So we're going to multiply the top and the bottom by this. Okay. So on top, when you multiply by the conjugate, remember, you're going to basically just multiply the firsts and the lasts. So the firsts, when I multiply, basically it cancels the radical. So I'm going to get x plus h minus 2, and then we're going to get minus, and then in parentheses, because remember, we got to distribute, we're going to get x minus 2. Because again, the radicals disappear, they cancel each other out. And then the bottom, we're just going to write this whole thing, h times radical x plus h minus 2 plus radical x minus 2. Okay, so on top, we're going to distribute the negative sign. And if I distribute the negative sign, I get x. Let me write my limit. Limit is h approaches 0. I'm going to get x plus h minus 2. And then minus x and plus 2. And again, the bottom is going to stay the same. Okay, so combine like terms on top. The x's are going to cancel, x minus x. Negative 2 plus 2 cancels, so on top I'm left with an h. The bottom I'm left with h times radical x plus h minus 2 plus radical x minus 2. So, whoops. There we go. What's going to happen to the h's? The h's are going to cancel, so I have a 1 on top, and then on the bottom I have radical x plus h minus 2 minus radical x minus 2. Now, we're going to plug in 0 for the h. So if I plug in 0 for h, basically I'm going to be left with 1 over, so limit is h goes to 0, 1 over radical x minus 2 minus radical x minus 2. Now, how many of those do I have? Oops, that should be a plus. Okay, how many on the bottom? I have radical x minus 2 and a radical x minus 2. I have 2 of them, so it's 2 radical x minus 2. So that is my formula. So in other words, I just found the slope. And let's say I wanted to know, what's the slope when x equals 2? So if I plug 2 in, I would get 1/2. Or hey, what's the slope when x equals 6? So if I plug 6 in, 6 minus 2 is 4, the square root of 4 is 2, I'd get 1/4. The slope is 1/4. So these are what the slopes are. So in other words, I can pick any point I want and plug it in and get the slope. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. Oh, we have a quadratic. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing we just did. We're going to use the same formula. So limit is h approaches 0. Okay, so we got 3 times, so instead of x, we put x plus h in for all the x's. So I'm plugging it into both of those x's. Minus f of x, so in parentheses, f of x is just 3x squared plus x. There we go. All over h. Okay, so this is the fun part. It's a quadratic. So when I have a squared, I'm going to have to multiply it out. So I'm just going to kind of do this off to the side. Oops. So I'm multiplying it out, double distributing. Okay. I'm going to get x squared plus xh plus xh plus h squared. And that's going to be 2xh. Okay, so limit as h approaches 0, we have 3 times x squared plus 2xh plus h squared plus x plus h. I'm going to also distribute the negative, so minus 3x squared minus x all over h. Okay, so if I distribute the 3, this is 3x squared plus 6xh plus 3h squared. So that's if I multiply it all out. So on top, I have 3x squared plus 6xh plus 3h squared plus x plus h minus 3x squared minus x all over h. Okay, so again, limit as h approaches 0. All right, let's see. The 3x squareds are going to cancel. This x is going to cancel with this x. Now, I don't see anything else that cancels. And when I rewrite things, I always like to do the highest power first. So I'm going to write the 3h squared first. Then I have plus 6xh and then plus h all over h. Hey, let's look at the top. They all have an h in common. Let's take an h out. 3h plus 6x plus 1. Don't forget that plus 1. All over h, the h's can cancel. So now all I have is 3h plus 6x plus 1. But remember, it is the limit of h. H approaches 0. So if I send this to 0, this is going to cancel out. So my slope is 6x plus 1. So again, what did we find? We found the slope. So again, if x equals negative 2, and I want to know the slope at negative 2, if I plug negative 2 in, 6 times negative 2 plus 1 gives me a slope of negative 11. So you can pick any point you want and plug it in. So you can always solve any problem you want using just x's and then plug the number in after. Okay, let's take a look. Ooh, this one looks like a you try question. So this has a radical in it. I did one with a radical in it, and I gave you an easier one. And let's take a look at this one. This is also a you try. It's a quadratic. I just did a quadratic. This one, again, should be a little easier. We will go over number 3 and number 4 in class. Bye.